What's going on, guys? Welcome back to the Move Local podcast brought to you by The Movement. My name is Dalton and I'm coming at you guys with another episode this week. We're super stoked about our guest this week. If you guys have been following along the movement, you know that our team is running the 100-miler relay at Sulphur Springs. And today I'm talking to one of the race directors, Russell Thacker. I'm super excited to dive into all things Sulphur, this year's race, trail running, and all that fun stuff. So Russell, welcome to the show.
I'm glad to be here. Super happy to be here.
Did you get out for a run today? It's a beautiful day.
You know what? You almost lost me to a run today.
Yeah.
I was kind of kicking around and thinking this would be a great day to be out on the trail, but I did get out on Sunday for our last training session.
Yep.
Most people may have seen it on our socials. We had an epic amount. I think it was just over 100 people that showed up. So it was just, and the trail was in great shape too.
Yeah.
So, but unfortunately, no, not today. But
But
you know. I got out this morning. I got out and saw my usual sunrise as I do most days.
I appreciate you sacrificing your run for this conversation. It means a lot. But before we dive into like all things Sulphur and that, I'd love to hear a little bit of your background into running and trail running. Has this been something that's been part of your life for a while? I know some other people find it later on in their life. I'm just curious to learn a little more about that.
I mean, that's probably a pretty good summation of me too, right?
Yeah.
I was, I started, I'm a trades guy. I was, at a period in my 20s, I was 280 pounds, smoked 2 packs a day, very unhealthy. Kind of woke up one day and realized that's not the life I wanted to have, and started getting myself into shape. Probably started road running fairly late. I mean, I've always been a little bit athletic in the sport, and I played golf, I played rugby, I played hockey, but I never really got into running until probably my 30s, and then I'm a little bit ADHD. I shouldn't say I'm a little bit ADHD. I'm all ADHD. So once I'm in. So I started doing a lot of road running, did a ton of marathons. Wasn't a fast guy. And then a few of my running friends from the run club I'm in and had suggested doing an ultra. And so I did my first ultra, which was a 50K in Niagara Falls. And then went from there to kind of running trail, and then that was it. My life completely and utterly changed. I don't do road races anymore. I'm completely in love with being on the trail. So I was probably in my mid 40s. I'm 54 now, so probably a little over a decade I've been running trail, and I've done 100 mile, I've done relay like you, I've done 20Ks, 50Ks, 50 mile. So, but I've been very fortunate to travel around, and I've done the Barkley Fall Classic 5 times. So that's awesome. Going down for my 6th. So
cool.
Yeah. So, but yeah, I always say to people, I'm not a very, I don't go to church, but in terms of the traditional sense, but the forest is my church, and I go there as often as I can.
Yeah, and I feel like that's what draws a lot of people to the trails. And like, it's funny, my experience into running is somewhat similar in the sense that like I just started running probably 3 years ago, so I'm 30 now, and I played a lot of sports growing up. Hockey, football was kind of my main thing in university, and then once I transitioned away from that, I was kind of trying to figure out like what do I want to do, and did some CrossFit, but then eventually kind of came across running and started on the road. And I'm still like, I've experienced both, and I know that I'm going to eventually go back to the trails. I've done like a 50K, and then I did a big a backyard ultra, and then I've done some 20K. So, and I really enjoy that. And then I'm like, I know that's where I'm going to end up. I have some other goals right now from like a road racing standpoint, but there's something about the trails that like calls you,
Well, I mean, case in point, I mean, you look at a Reid Burrows, you look at a Reid Coolsat, you look at a Krista Duchene, Reid Burrows and Krista both being at our race this year. Both have a long marathon history, Olympic marathon history too, or not Reid Coolsat does, but that is the migration, right? It's kind of like I think people like yourself and others have that sort of, I've got a bit of a competitive goal that I want to meet on the road side.
Yeah.
And then they kind of transition over to the trail.
Yeah.
Having been fortunate enough to be down in Western States this year past, I was crewing a friend of mine. When you look at the elites who are probably around the same age as you and who have completely don't do any road, but that's their competitive arena right now, right?
Yeah.
Like you look at Courtney and a ton of those people, like look what happened with Jasmine Paris and Barkley, right?
Yeah, it's crazy.
Yeah, right. It's nuts, right? But they're all in that kind of pocket right now, and that sort of like where they want to make their mark on the industry and on
the performance levels in the ultra space. Like I'm newer to it. I've been probably watching them for around like 3 to 4 years now, but it just seems like the performances are just elevating like over year. So which is a cool thing. Like I think that draws a lot of people to it, which is good. I think having more people be aware of like trail ultras and what's going on in the space, there's probably a lot of good to that.
I think the thing with when you look at road versus trail, I mean, obviously road is, you sit in a corral, you get all amped up, you got music pumping, everybody's just kind of in their own, zone. And that's not to say that there's not that same level of focus with the trail runner, but I always use this analogy. If you ask a road runner, like, hey, I'm running Chicago, or I'm running New York, or I'm running Boston, or I just finished running it, at some point in that conversation, it's going to loop around to what was your time.
Right.
Because I think road runners instinctively want to benchmark themselves against each other to kind of say, am I faster than this guy? Am I slower than this guy? Where is he in the sphere of, of my capabilities personally? So there's that competitive kind of thing going on. Trail, although competitive, I've seen runners go out and completely crush a course, and I've seen them a month later and completely fall apart. And you'll talk to one runner and say, I just did Oil Creek, or I just did, Zion, and they're like, dude, like that was a totally crazy course and it completely trashed me and all this stuff. But you know that they're competitive. Mm-hmm. And it was really driven home for me when I was in Western States, as I just said, that when I was I was literally walking through the village, and there's Courtney. She's just chilling. I got sat down. I talked with her mom, her dad, her husband. She was completely laid back, and and it's the one and only sport where the elites start in the same group as everybody else.
Yeah, right? For sure.
So they kind of it's that community that really, that's what drew me in, right? Like I just fell in love with it from there.
There's a lot of humility I find in the people, and I feel like it just, there's just this level of understanding. I think whether you're like an elite level person like doing what they're doing, or like you're like me going out there and just like doing my thing, there's like this understanding, like we're suffering in some way, like that you can relate, even though like the performances are so far apart from each other in terms of like, in terms of time.
It's all the same. I mean I know I've referenced Courtney a number of times, but I mean she refers to it as the pain cave, right? Like just being in that, and I call it the house, right? Like when I'm running a race like that, I just go find a room in my house in my head, and I just live there, right? I watch TV, I read a book, my body's moving, but I'm existentially on somewhere else.
That's cool. To talk a little bit about like sulfur and stuff, I know we were joking a little bit before we started here. Sulfur's been around since I was born, so it's a long time. From my understanding, it's the oldest trail running race is going on right now in Canada.
In Canada, I would. I mean, it's kind of hard to put a pin in all those numbers, but for definitely in Canada. But it was Burlington Run Club, who is the kind of owners, or BRC, who own the race. Who hired my partners and I from Straw Dog Racing to manage this race 2 years ago. This will be our third year. Sorry, I should say. So Sulphur was their training ground. They used to run in Sulphur Springs as just a regular runs, and then somebody said, hey, we should do a little club race, and it started with a 10K and a 20K, and then kind of just develop from there. And then they've gone as far as having, I think it was in 2017, they had a 200 miler.
Oh wow, I didn't know that.
So that was a pretty epic year.
Crazy.
They started it on a Thursday, It poured with rain. And there was the record holder in the winter that year was a guy from Germany.
Wow.
And he still is. And there's been people have asked us if we're going to bring back the 200, because if you look at sort of the evolution of trail, that's getting more competitive now. You're getting Moab, and you're getting all of these. It's
really, like where do you stop?
Yeah, exactly. Well, I mean, look at backyard ultras, right? I mean, I've played around a little bit in Jeff in Happy Trails Gong Show,
the Gong Show,
right? And and you look at the backyard ultra as a thing. You look at Uhor Varies, who just came in second, who just was finished in Barkley. 5 days. That's nutty type of running, and so it's been around a long time. It's evolved, and we're hoping to be good stewards of what we were given.
Yeah,
right? And keep developing it and growing it and making it more and more attractive for people.
You bring up that the winner of that 200 miler was from Germany. Like, one thing that I was surprised about, because I'm like I was telling you, I think I've participated now in some form in the last 2-3 years at Sulphur, and I was always surprised by the draw of people, where they're coming from. It's not just people in Hamilton that are racing the race. And what do you think draws the people to this race specifically? What have you noticed?
I think it is a unique race. I mean, it has its challenges. It's deceptive, this course, right? And I think that's it's not something like Gary Robbins and his Coastal Mountain Trail races out in the Western region, BC, and all stuff are all mountain races, or death race and all stuff where you're climbing extreme climbs. But Sulphur is a niggly little. It just nips at you and tears you apart, and it can really crush a runner. And I think a lot of people have come out, then they wanted to come back and say, I can do better, or now that I whatever else, and grow on the and grow themselves in terms of accomplishments and stuff like that. But as far as I mean, obviously, this year we're getting a lot of people coming because of this whole Western States thing. But we've had, I had a runner last year who came from Georgia. He wanted to do a 50 miler on his 50th birthday, and it was the only race that he could find in North America that had a race. He flew all the way up here just to be at our race.
That's cool.
Right? And I thought that's really, really, really cool, right? So
and from my experience, I haven't done too many ultra races, but the thing that I've always enjoyed about it is just the vibe of the day is great. The people and the supporters and the racers, everyone, and it's probably like this at a lot of events, but there's just something where the energy is great. And I think especially for me being in the Hamilton community and now having built relationships with people in the space, the running space, it seems like a place where people like to gather to share the experience of running. And I think that's a really cool thing. You can feel that energy when you go to the race.
I think one of the things that we've endeavored to do and we keep doing, and what keeps us up at night is there's two things we try to do. We've talked a little bit, so I'll circle back a little bit about to the being given this race and the length of this race, and that it started with 10s and 20s, and we've grown the race, but we don't want to lose what its roots were, and that we don't want to be, there's been a lot of backlash with UTMB lately, and that they've become very corporate, or you've seen, Ironman's had a similar, backlash in social medias in terms of their, desire to grow, and it almost seems like it's just a cash grab. And we've been very conscious and very concerned about making sure that it stays that local thing, right? And the second thing is it's a festival. We want it to be more like a festival atmosphere, right? So people are, they don't just come and do their thing and then they leave, right? They come, they spend the weekend. One of the greatest things we did, this will be the third year for it, was flipping the 10 and 20 Ks to the Sunday. So all races used to be start on the Saturday, and then by Sunday morning at 11:58, when the last 100 miler is crawling up the hill, there's 16 people standing there going, way to go. You know, everybody's happy, but it's their crew, their family.
Yeah.
You know, now there's 500 people from the 10s and 20s that are all standing around because they've just seen these people out on the course, and the MC's going like, hey, wait here 5 minutes. There's going to be a 100-miler. He's going to come up and finish. And he's been out there for 26 hours. Like that, there's two things that happen there. You get these 10s and 20s who are the seeding for what we hope will be the future 100-milers,
right?
And all
like
that
getting
stuff.
a taste for
they're getting, and then there's, but you know, so they are looking at somebody who's been out there, like they just ran a 30-minute 10K and they're totally stoked, but they're looking at a person going, you've been running for 20 plus hours, you know. And then on the flip side, those 100-milers they're just feeding off that energy, right? And that's where I think that community comes in, where everybody just vibes off of everybody else, right?
Yeah.
So,
what do you think has been like some of the things that you guys have really tried to focus on since like taking over the race? Like, has there been some priorities? I mean, has the Western State thing, which we'll dive into, always been something that you guys wanted to bring in, or was there?
No, actually, the Western States thing was kind of happenstance. I mean, it was something, perhaps it was in the back of our mind. I think first and foremost, we wanted to put like runner safety and in giving every opportunity for the runners to be successful was and is our prime goal every time. You know, how many aid stations do we got? Are we giving them everything that the runner needs in order to maximize their opportunity to be successful? You know, if somebody toes the line and they're not trained, that's not on us. But totally. I mean, if they're ready to go, then we're ready to back them up. Yeah. That's always been the sort of the basis of our platform. Then we wanted to create a vibe about it, right? Give it something that was a little bit different. I think when we took it over too, we were the first to really push it onto socials.
Yeah.
Right. So now we have a social media captain on the day, and we have a social media tent, and we're really trying to, because I had a runner with me last year on one of the training runs who was from Niagara Falls. She was a young lady, and she was new to trail running, and she found us on social media. Like, she didn't even know the first place to go to find a trail race, and just was on Instagram and found us and said, hey, this might be cool. And so she came out and tested us out and stuff like that. And she ended up running, I think she ended up running the 20K last year. And I think she's back this year for the 50. So, So that was kind of the basis. Like, it's runner safety and giving them every opportunity. And then we have a term, we just got a next level, you know, trying to just take it to the next level. Like, what else can we do
to like legitimize this?
Yeah, well, not even, I don't even think legitimize it. I think we are legit. I think it's more just, you know, enhancing the runner experience, right?
Yeah.
Like what's neat and cool and different and stuff like that. And it doesn't have to be how crazy do we make the course, but it's just, you know, like, again, it goes back to that vibe and that feeling and stuff like that, right? You know, like prizing and all that stuff, just to make people feel really, really respected, right? And valued, right? Like, I mean, obviously this doesn't happen unless those thousands of people don't sign up, right? I can stand here and talk about it, and, you know, if nobody's interested in it, doesn't seem interesting, then nobody's going to show up. So we owe it to them to provide them, you know, something that respects who they are.
That's cool. Yeah, you can really feel that though. Like, from having participated in it, like I can feel that that's something that you guys try to do, which is awesome. And, you know, touching on just the number of people that are participating in the race, like you were telling me before, like this year and compared to last year, the numbers are obviously way up in terms of like people being in the race, which is great. And I know that ties into probably a lot of what we've been talking about a little bit with Western States. So I'd love to like maybe dive into what is that Western States, and what is it that you're trying to accomplish with this race. I think that would be a cool thing.
So
to
for anybody who's listening or whatever, like, Western States is considered the epicenter of all 100-milers. That's where the 100-miler came from. So Western States originally, and if any, I guess it's a little bit why it's a belt buckle, is because Western States used to be a horse race. Right. So it was a Western horse race in California from Auburn, from Reno to Auburn. And then one year, one rider, his horse went lame, so he hopped off the horse and kind of ran beside the horse. And then the following year, he decided, I'm going to see if I can do this on my foot, like actually run this route. And
there you go.
There you go. Right.
Yeah.
And that's kind of where it started. Right. So it's considered the foreground or the forerunner of all 100 milers. And so it's steeped in legacy, and it's been around for so long. It's so hard to get into. The second thing was there really isn't a qualifier for Western states in Ontario. Ontario is a population of 14 million people, right? We are the largest populous province in all of Canada. There are 2 or 3 races in Western Canada that are Western States qualifiers. There's a couple of races in Quebec that are Western States qualifiers, but nothing in Ontario. Mm-hmm. So we saw an opportunity to approach Western States and say, how do we, become a qualifier, and what does it take? So we went through a series of discussions with them. It was about not just about distance, but elevation. So, we made sure that we kind of ticked all the boxes. And they fully agreed that they needed something in this area of the country that would give them obviously feeders into the Western states. So the Western states, again, for anybody who's listening who doesn't understand it, it's a balloted system. So there's a bunch of elites and golden ticket people that are there, and there's about 164 out of 400 runners that are pulled from
which is so slim compared to the number of.
So again, the runner I was crewing last year, he had 36 ballots in there, and he only had a 32% chance of being pulled.
Yeah, that's crazy.
But I also know somebody who went in with one ballot
and got it.
They got in,
that's
right?
crazy. Yeah.
So that's just the odds. But you're looking at a 5 to 6 year average of racing before you get your opportunity to stake your claim at Western States. So we knew there was a need for it. We knew that Western States was kind of interested. So but it's committee, right? There's a committee that votes on who's qualified to be a Western States qualifier. Or approved to be a Western States qualifier. So they came to us and said, okay, so this year for 2024, if you can have 100K finishers in under 18 hours, or 100 milers in under the 30 hours. If one of those two things happen, not a mixed bag, has to be one of those two races. If that happens, that anybody within the 100K and the 100 miler who met the criteria will get an opportunity to submit a ballot for this year. Then in the fall, the committee will meet, and then we're hopeful that they will then just kind of rubber stamp that Sulphur becomes a Western States qualifier on their circuit moving forward, and then we can just carry on the way we typically would. But you're right, there's a lot of runners this year. I mean, last year we had 8,600 milers, and this year we have 250.
Which is crazy. That's such an increase.
Yeah.
That's awesome though.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's a lot of stress so out of my partners, my 2 other partners, Mauro Campanelli and Steve Connor, Mauro is more of our finance and budget and vendor relationships deals with our clients. And then Steve Connor is our socials and does our vendor relationships, our sponsor relationships. I'm operations. So I'm the guy that has to deal with feeding people, getting them, making sure medical's there, So adding that number of people on for a weekend to feed and make sure they got porta potties, and a lot of people think that this isn't my full-time job, although I'd love it to be my full-time job at some point in retirement or whatever else. But people think, we just pick up the phone in December and we start kind of doing our thing. And any race director will tell you, particularly on a race of this size, I mean, we finished on May 27th of last year. We dotted the I's, crossed the T's. We put a ribbon on it for in June, and then the next day we were already like, okay, what's 2024 look like? Yeah. And we're already having meetings talking about 2025.
Yeah, right? For sure. Yeah, that's one thing that I've learned a lot, and I've gained a lot of respect from a race director standpoint. I've had the opportunity to talk to some people that put on races, and it's like the back end stuff that goes on, the cost, the logistics, all that stuff is like beyond what anyone could imagine, I think. And then when you get a peek inside of what that looks like, you're like, well, you're very grateful. And then I know sometimes people will have thoughts on cost and whatnot. But the more I learn, I'm like, oh, if I'm going to a race that is doing what you guys are trying to do, put the runners first, give them this opportunity, it's like I have no problem paying money for that, because like the amount of time and effort and money that goes into putting on an event like that is like way more than most people recognize, you know?
Yeah, I mean, and again, that's great to know, because I think that's, again, our goal, right? Like, we want people to see value in the thing, but we also want people to understand that there's a cost associated to all of those things, right? And we try to put on a bit of a premium product, right? Like, that's one of the other things that we want people to come and say, hey, well, this is top notch, right? This is, you know, up there with Javelina and you know, other big races.
Mm-hmm. Having run it before, what are some of your thoughts on the course? Like, what are some of the challenging parts that you are like, people maybe not expect, and are like, oh yeah, this is actually harder than we thought?
Well, as I already said, I mean, there isn't a lot of like super sustained climbs in that course. Obviously, everybody talks about Martin Road, because you know, if you're doing the 100, you're coming up that thing 8 times, and you know, with Degree being one of our sponsors, it's the highest degree of difficulty, which is, you know, we tagged it a few years ago, and it's been a great marketing thing beyond that. The course is deceptive in that it undulates slightly ever so often, right? So you think that it's just a rolling kind of thing, but it starts to just pick away at the runner. And then I think a lot of people, obviously there's what we call the lollipop. So you come off Headwater, you know, cross over Martin Road, you go back into Headwaters, and you do this, what we affectionately refer to as the lollipop. So you're about 3/4 of a K in, you've got a 4 or 5K loop or 4.5K loop, and then you got a 3/4 K trek out. The front half has got what's called the Sisters. Everybody knows about that long climb up the top, and then you've got the ridge. I think one of the most deceptive parts of that course, particularly if you're going long, right? And I mean, if you're doing a 10K or if you're doing the 20K, that's fine.
You can really
anything beyond that, because that back half of that Sister is a nice downhill grade, and you naturally just want to open your gate.
It's
and
fun.
It's
the most fun. It's the most fun of the race. But I've never done multiple loops. I've always done a 20K, so I could see how that would fry you.
Your quads will just get like completely trashed. And I warn people, I say, you know, like, you'll have this natural urge, especially if it's daylight and you're feeling good and you just want to open that stride up and you want to just bomb down that, because it's just it's fun. It's like being on one of those little slip and slides coming down, right? And then you get to, but if you're doing that 8 times, you know, you're just screaming going down that hill. So that's, I think that's what I think is what I respect the most about that course, is that it will pick away at some, even the most hardened runners.
And I think it's runnability. It's a very runnable course. So I think you get caught up, and that adds up too. Like, you're going way faster. There's not as much technical sections maybe as like some other ultras. Agreed. Where like it kind of forces you to slow down. I feel like you can really go out too hot. I feel like.
Like I've mentioned, I've been to the Barkley Fall Classic a number of times. I'm going back again this year. I'm a great climber. You know, I'm not a fast guy. I'm a bigger guy. So, and that's kind of another reason why I transitioned to trail, because I never broke 4 hours in a road marathon. I didn't, and I think part of me didn't really want to put the work in to do what I needed to do to be that competitive at a road race, like to make Boston or whatever else. But I found I was built for trail, right? And I'm a great climber. I can climb, but my downhills I'm not fast, but I watch guys go bombing down these mountains that are super technical, right? And they're just hopping.
It's a crazy thing to watch.
It's almost scary, right? And I've seen people do some unfortunate slip and falls in us. But to your point, you know, Sulphur isn't super technical. It has a couple of technical spots in it. We have toyed around with, when we talk about our degree relationship, doing a higher degree of difficulty and actually doing another 20K route that is single track, you know, little, you know, really, you know, more in the mountain bike parts of the course of the park, that regular runners of Sulphur will know. We've kind of talked about that just to maybe amp that up a little bit. But you're right. It is, for the most part, it's groomed gravel. It's, so you can let your mind kind of wander a bit. But I find when your mind wanders, that's when you're gonna catch a toe. Or...
It adds a different degree of challenge.
Yeah.
What is like I'm sure there's multiple things, but what is like one of your favorite parts of the race weekend? Like what are some things that really stick out in your mind that you really enjoy about it?
So again, just referencing Western States, I mean, when I got to go down there, unfortunately my runner, he had some GI issues, so he missed a cutoff, so we were done early. So we ended up going down to the high school and for golden hour. So that's the last hour of the race when these, the people that are completely gutting it out, and coming across the finish line. And so I think I would probably say that's probably one of two of my favorite parts of the race, right? Is being there in that last hour, or even at the last few minutes of any of the distances, whether it's a 10K, the 20K. When I've been out, I live very close to the course for the Chile Half Marathon in Burlington. I go down, stand on Lakeshore, and I wait until the last runner passes me. Because you know what, I have a total respect for the elites, and the front packers who are, they're running, but they're not high-fiving people. They're in their zone and they're running, right? You get that mid pack to end pack. They're looking for encouragement. They're there because they love they just love being in that environment. And that person at the end of the train is that one who is gutting it out. And they usually have the most unique story. So I think that's the part that I love the most about being at Sulphur is watching those people who have come in at the last few seconds of the race, of the timing, of whether it's the 10K, the 20K, the 50 miler, the 100 miler, and just watching them across the finish line. Last year, if you're aware, we had the youngest Canadian male ever to finish a 100 miler, so 19 years old.
Oh wow!
Yeah,
I wasn't aware.
Matt Monroe, first ever 100 miler. He was nearly what we call our Lantern Rouge winner, so he was our dead effing last finisher. So we have an award for the last runner, right? That we've taken a little bit from the Tour de France, right? So in the Tour de France, in each section, the last cyclist of each section wears the red jersey, and they symbolize the kind of the red caboose of the train. And we took that and said, because that person has expended no less of an effort than that person at the front, right? They've grinded it out, and they still cross the finish line. They get that medal and all that stuff. So we wanted to acknowledge that. So I think I just love being at the finish line. Yeah. Right. I love hearing people's stories. I love watching them progress. I've seen people come, hey, I did the 10K last year. I'm here doing the 20 this year. This year I'm going to try the 50, and they're scared out of their minds. But, when you watch them come across the finish line and realize that they have gone to a place that they never thought possible. And I think, not to be too, theoretical about the whole thing. Like, I mean, when you watch somebody finish a major ultra, like a 50 miler or a 100 miler, and you realize that then you've seen them at 2:00 in the morning, and there's nothing left of that person when they come across the finish line. Yeah. Like, you are the most truest form of the person that you are that you could ever possibly be. Yeah. We all wear faces and we all wear masks in public and stuff like that, and with our friends and groups and all stuff. And when you're doing something like that, you are just who you are. Like, you can't be anything else.
You got nothing left.
You got nothing left to give, right? Yeah. You've given it all. And I've watched people at 2:00 in the morning look at me and crying, going, I'm done. I can't do this. And, we try to get them on their feet, get their foot out, and get them to go down that hill again. And then you realize, 4 loops later, they come up and they give you a hug and they go, I was gonna quit. Yeah. Right. That's one of the things like that makes all of this worth it. I mean, it's stressful. I fight with my partners. I stay up at night thinking about things, and I think, why am I doing this? I could just go out and be a runner and not have to worry about it. And that's what keeps us coming back, is just So standing on the finish line is the 100% best place to be.
I love it.
So like if you're, and I encourage a lot of people and many of your listeners, come down, stand at the
watch.
Just come and hang out and watch, and come at the start and then come like halfway through and then come on Sunday at 11:58 or 11 o'clock and watch that last hour of these runners who are just gutting it out to meet their goals. And it can be heartache and it can be triumph, right? But it's at the very least they're doing what they can.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. That's great. I'd love to transition into a little bit of rapid fire questions and then we'll wrap up. But you're local to the Hamilton area, correct?
Yeah, Burlington. Yeah.
So what would be like one of your favorite local restaurants?
I am really into a place called Rapscallion right now.
Man, everyone tells me about that place.
Tapas place on James, right next to the Armories.
Yeah.
They have an amazing whip feta.
Heard about the whip feta too.
Again, the vibe in there is really cool. It's kind of like an old library in the front and stuff like that. But the owners are super nice, and so that's my current go-to spot.
Okay. What would be like favorite local coffee shop?
That's kind of hard for me. I drink a lot of coffee, but I try to just drink it at home.
Yeah, that's fair.
I'd have a hard time with that. There used to be a place in Oakville I used to go to that one a swimmer triathlon guy I used to know ran. It was called Bean There.
Okay.
Used to go there all the time.
Yeah.
But
more of a home coffee guy.
Yeah, I'm more of a home coffee guy. I'm not into the whole French press and all stuff.
Yeah.
So
yeah. What about? We were talking a little bit about Shed before, but do you have a favorite local brewery that you?
Right now it's Shed.
Yeah.
Way to go, Sean and Ed. As I mentioned, I'm fortunate enough to be a member at the Dundas Valley Golf Club, and I drink a fair amount of it there when I'm there. And just prior to being here today, I got to pop in there and have a pint. So, and I'm Nickelbrook. It's close to me too, so I just pop around. I'm a real hoppy. I like IPAs, so I'm really interested in trying anything that's local. Right?
Yeah.
So.
What would be like one of your favorite ways to stay active outside of trail running? Is there anything else? Like I know you just mentioned golf, but is
walk. I walk 3 days a week. I have a very good friend of mine who's a master swimmer. He's done the English Channel, Lake Ontario. He's the first Canadian to swim the Straits of Magellan in Chile. Him and I have, he's dabbled in a little trail running with me. We get up 5 a.m. 3 days a week and we walk around. In the winter we do kind of Burlington area. In the summer months we do Oakville, and we go try to time everything so we can see the sunrise and start my day every day with a sunrise and standing at the lake.
Yeah, that's not a bad way.
I honestly think that is the one thing that I would say any people that live in Hamilton, Burlington, Oakville particularly, or even anywhere around the lake, that we take for granted is the fact that we have a great lake right there. I swim in that lake as much as I can. Everybody talks about doing cold dips. I've been in that lake a number of times, even in the summer and a couple of times in the winter. But it's just to start your day listening to the waves and watch the sun break. Day of the eclipse I went down and it was a fantastic sunrise. I don't know if it had anything to do with the fact that the eclipse was coming, but it was just when that sun cracks the horizon, it's really magical.
That's sweet. Last question I always like to ask everyone is what does move local mean to you when you hear those words?
It's community, right? It's supporting what is local, right? I love being part of this community. I run clubs are, super, I always tell, my daughter moved overseas and I said to her, I know you're not a big runner, but I said, if you want to get yourself integrated is find a local run club, right? And just start talking with these people and you'll get that kind of, connection, right? But yeah, anything that's, it's community. Move local to me means supporting what's near. Don't go into the city. Don't go to the big box. If you can, try to find something that suits what your needs are and feeds back into us.
Yeah, Love it. Well, Russell, thanks so much for your time.
Yeah.
I really appreciate it. I'd love for you to like leave maybe where people could follow Sulphur Springs, check out the website. I know most things are sold out by now.
Yeah, we're completely, we're
maybe for next year, if they're listening to this, like where they can check
get in
out,
early next year, because if we get the Western States thing,
Yeah.
it's, particularly if you're looking for the longer distances. We have our email is strawdogracing@gmail.com if you want to reach out and ask us a question. You can see us on our socials. So again, Sulphur Springs Trail Race on Facebook and Instagram. And we have a Straw Dog Racing on Instagram as well.
Oh,
so,
cool.
Yeah. So that's...
And if you Google it, you'll find
we're a bunch of 50-year-old guys trying to figure out social media. So we apologize that we're not maybe as technically advanced as we would like to be, but we're getting there.
Yeah, I love it. Awesome. Well, Russell, thanks so much for your time. I really appreciate it.
It's a pleasure. I really appreciate being here.